Welcome! My name is Jeremy O'Connell, and I'm the lead developer or programmer for the Connect2SSH bash utility. Now, before I begin the other videos that are explaining how you use this utility and show you all the nitty-gritty details, as it were, I want to spend a few minutes explaining what Connect2SSH is doing and why I created it. At the beginning of 2016, I said to myself, enough. I am tired of the Windows desktop. Now, I had been using Unix and Linux servers going back into the late 90s. I started off on Sun Microsystems Spark systems and ran Spark boxes for quite a while until about 2008-ish or whatever, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly. And then I started using Red Hat Enterprise, then switched over to CentOS, and now I have some FreeBSD machines and Ubuntu Server. So server-wise, I was comfortable with Unix. I knew Unix, and that was no problem. But desktop-wise, I was still running Windows. And that just didn't sit well for me with all the changes that Microsoft made to Windows 10. So I told myself, look, by the end of 2016, I want to be on a Linux desktop, Linux bare metal. Now, I had Linux virtual machines and desktops in using programs such as like VirtualBox, things like that. But again, I wanted to be running a Linux desktop on bare metal. So I said, okay, what are my requirements? And as like a lot of people, I looked over what software I needed and counterparts. Was never really heavy into the Microsoft ecosystem other than Windows. I was already using things like Vivaldi, Chrome, Firefox for web browsing, things like LibreOffice, OpenOffice for documents, and a whole bunch of other utilities, things like Thunderbird software, such as that. So those would all transfer over to Linux, no problem. But of course, there were a few applications that I needed to move over, and the most critical that I couldn't find a solution for was going to be managing servers. Because SSH is obviously built into any Unix distro or distribution. FreeBSD, Linux, it doesn't matter. That's just a core component. So that wasn't an issue, okay? But on Windows, I used, because Windows didn't have that. I know now you can get Ubuntu, Bash, and all that, but at the time they didn't have all that fancy stuff, and they'd just begun to release it. Well, I guess they started to release it, but anyway, I wasn't going to run that. I still wanted to get on Linux. So going way, way back, when I was needing to connect to these servers, early 2000s, things of that, I needed a client to connect, and Windows didn't have a way to SSH itself. So I started using the secure CRT program and the Secure FX program. And over the years, I bought the upgrades and that type of thing. So I was very used to those. I knew how they worked. They were easy. But obviously, as I just said, a Unix-based system or Linux, which is a Unix sort of philosophy, not quite 100%, I know, but it follows Unix-like syntax and architectures, has SSH built in. So I'm like, okay, SSH is there at the command line, but how am I going to get my files that I want to upload? Because periodically I would use on Windows Secure CRT to upload files. And that's where I sort of hit a stumbling block. So I did some research and I found, well, of course there's FileZilla, things like that. But then FileZilla doesn't excel at issuing SSH commands. So I'm like, okay, it has a rudimentary, a lot of FTP type programs do have a rudimentary way to issue SSH commands. But I wanted full power of SSH. And I wanted an easy way to upload files. Because again, I liked Secure FX. And there just weren't any really good programs for that. There was one, I believe, written in Perl, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of that, so the author of that, I do apologize for that, but there was one I found, and it did connect, it seemed to work, I tried it, but then it wasn't all that great either at doing the SSH connections. Handling that part of it. It was pretty good with the tools. So I'm like, okay, I need one tool. Because see, the way, if you're not familiar with Secure CRT, Secure FX, is you enter in your server, your username once, and then they both share the same database. you go between two different programs, but they can point to the same database file. That's what I wanted. So that's why Connect2SSH was born. Because, yes, at times I know you can do things like secure copy. You could even rsync into servers and transfer files. You could do a SFTP connection. But I still wanted a way to easily transfer files. So Connect2SSH will allow you to easily manage your SSH connections, and it will easily allow you to hook up or mount your SSH shares, or I should say connections as a share on your local computer, and then transfer files either using the command line or using some type of file manager like Kaja, however you want to pronounce it, Nautilus, Dolphin, etc. I'm not going to go over all the file managers out there in the Linux land, and then of course FreeBSD has its versions and all that kind of stuff. But you can do this, and that is the power of Connect2SSH. It's one central place to manage your accounts, your hosts, servers, firewalls, hardware switches if you can manage them. Anything you can connect to with SSH. And the great part is it uses underlying open source tools like SSH, SSHFS, which if you don't know what that is explained in the video series, so continue watching. And, of course, Bash itself, because this is a Bash utility. And there are a few other packages like SQLite and some other stuff, but I'm not going to get into all of that. That's explained in additional videos. So that's why I sat down and created Connect2SSH, because I wanted one central place that I could mimic the functionality, if you will, of Secure CRT and Secure FX. And I hope you will find this tool very enjoyable. Thank you. See you in the next video.